Debt is always bad. Yeah, that's why you didn't buy your house with a mortgage. You totally waited until you could buy it cash. You shouldn't spend what you don't have. Absolutely. We need to get rid of corporate bailouts and subsidies. But why would we do that when there's no value in the other things that the government spends money on? We can forego some services to cut spending. We can make cuts on fire departments, traffic signals, 911 services, air traffic control, weather forecasts. Well, I guess we've already done some cuts with air traffic control in NOAA. Maybe we can look at trash services and water treatment. Dang, we already got water too. I'm sure we can find something else to cut. Maybe we let all the roads go private and become toll roads, not just the highways. We could sell all the public services to private companies. That way, those companies can make those services more efficient. I mean, we'd probably have to pay more when we use those services, but you'll never use them though. When was the last time you called the fire department? We don't actually need streetlights, do we? I'm not arguing that the government isn't slow, wasteful, and doesn't use taxpayer money effectively. I'm not arguing that a private company isn't more efficient than the government. Private companies are definitely better at managing their resources. Private companies are more motivated to improve services than the government is. They have to when they want to attract customers, but when they win the bid to take over the service that the government used to provide, who will they compete with? After they get the contract, will they cut corners on services to ensure profitability? Will they raise prices too? Maybe your business can bid for the job. You'll definitely be bidding against much larger companies. They'll be able to undercut all of your offers. Free market, am I right? But it's the experience that counts. Your small business would likely be pushed out. Large corporations with more money and more lawyers and more political influence would win most government contracts. They'd control essential services like water and power, transportation, healthcare, not because they're the best, but because they're the biggest. Small organizations wouldn't stand a chance. They wouldn't be able to afford the upfront costs or meet the complex legal requirements. And over time, this will lead to monopolies or near monopolies where only a few huge companies dominate. That's bad for competition, bad for quality, and bad for the people who rely on these services every day. And then those services will become less while costing more because people are no longer the priority. They're replaced with profits. I guess that's what we have to do to get rid of the national debt. I mean, people see national debt as a big problem. People say it's too high, that the government spends too much, that if we don't fix it soon, something terrible will happen. Some even suggest that we cut government services like healthcare, schools, or roads just to reduce the debt. Others don't want to tax the wealthy fairly because they believe that taxes are already too high. But what if I told you that the national debt is necessary? What if I told you it's actually good for most people in the country? And what if cutting services to reduce debt would actually hurt regular people more than help them? National debt isn't something to fear. Keeping services and fair taxes is the better path for everybody. When the government spends more money than it collects in taxes, it borrows money to make up for the difference. That borrowing becomes the national debt. The government borrows by selling something called bonds. A bond is like an IOU. Investors give the government money now, and the government promises to pay them back later, just like your mortgage. Later with a little bit of extra money called interest. The people who buy these bonds, they can be banks, retirement funds, other countries, or even you. Almost every country in the world has national debt, and most of them have had it for a very long time. In fact, it's considered normal. Countries don't usually pay off all their debt, and that's okay. It's okay because the economy keeps growing. New people are born. New workers join the economy, and new needs arise. Just like a business that borrows money to grow, countries use debt to invest in their future. They use money to build schools, repair roads, help the sick, support farmers, provide security, and create jobs. These services are what make a country work. Think about it. What if the government didn't spend money on building roads? You'd have a hard time getting to school, going to work, or even getting food from the grocery store. What if they didn't pay teachers or police officers? What if they didn't fund wastewater treatment or disaster relief? Government spending helps make our lives safer. A big chunk of the national debt is actually money that the government owes to its own citizens. Pension funds and retirement accounts, they invest in government bonds because they're very safe. That means people who are saving for retirement depend on that debt to be there. If we suddenly got rid of national debt, those retirement funds would lose value. That would hurt millions of Americans. There's also a misunderstanding that national debt is just like personal debt. People think the government needs to tighten its belt like a family might, but this isn't a fair comparison. You and I don't create money, but the government does. The US government prints its own money so it can always pay back its debt in US dollars. It's not the same as a household budget. The country is not a family. The country is a system that manages money for millions of people. Some people believe we should stop borrowing altogether and just cut spending instead, but cutting government services would do more harm than good. For example, if we got rid of public schools, only wealthy people could afford to educate their kids. If we removed public health care, people would get sicker and die earlier, especially those who can't afford private insurance. Cutting public services hurts regular working people the most. Imagine what would happen if we sold off all public services to private companies to get rid of debt. Highways, hospitals, schools, even police and fire departments could become businesses. These companies, they would need to make a profit, so they would charge people to use those services. That means toll roads everywhere, expensive hospital visits, as if they didn't cost too much already, costly school fees, and probably less help from the fire department unless you pay for it. Just imagine your house ablaze. The fire truck is there, and the firefighters are watching the flames grow. All because you left your credit card behind when you fled the house. Without the guarantee of payment, you can't utilize their service. What do? Run in and get it? Life would become harder and more expensive for everyone, except for the very rich. When the government pays interest on its debt, that money goes to the people who own the bonds. And most of those people are wealthy, and we've cut their taxes. So they buy more bonds because they have more money to invest. So the government debt pays them interest year after year, and that makes them even richer. If the US pays about $800 billion a year in interest, and much of that goes to the richest people, it means that they're getting richer just by owning debt. They don't have to work harder to invent anything new. They just collect money from the government. And that's why fair taxes are so important. If we don't tax interest income or wealth fairly, regular workers end up paying more while the rich are getting richer. Some people argue that lowering the national debt will help the economy, but the truth is the economy actually grows when the government spends wisely. That's because spending creates jobs. When the government hires construction workers to fix roads or teachers to work in schools, those workers, they spend their paychecks in local businesses. That spending, it helps shops, restaurants, and small companies thrive. The money circulates rather than being hoarded. Everyone benefits. Now, let's talk about fairness. If we refuse to tax unearned income, we're rewarding wealth over work. How does the phrase make your money work for you exist, but that money doesn't get taxed like a worker? When your money works for you, it's taxed less than if you went to work. We're rewarding wealth over work. People who work hard should not pay more in taxes than those who simply collect interest or inherit money. But right now, the tax system often does just that. That's why we need a more balanced tax system that makes sure the rich pay their fair share. National debt is not a disaster, it's a tool. When used well, it helps build a strong country. It allows us to invest in our people and prepare for the future. Cutting services to reduce debt is like breaking your car so you don't have to buy gas and then being forced to pay for premium octane. It doesn't make sense. And refusing to tax fairly just makes life harder for working families while giving the wealthy charity. So the next time you hear someone saying we need to cut services to reduce national debt, ask them this. Are you willing to lose your streetlights, your local trash services, the road you drive on to work? Are you okay with making life harder for seniors who depend on their pensions? Or for kids who need a good education? Because that's the cost of getting rid of the debt without using fair taxes. The truth is, national debt, when used responsibly, is not only good, but it's necessary. It keeps the country running, supports millions of people, and even protects the money in your retirement. It's not something that should be feared. It's something to understand and to use wisely for the good of everyone. I hope this reaches everybody who needs to hear it. YouTube wants you to watch this. And I'll see you very soon. Okay. Bye.